Good morning, everyone. Thank you for so much for watching this video. While there has been some weather issues and we have some classes that have been a little bit delayed, I think it's really important that you do get an understanding of what the operations plan does entail. And with those extended due dates, this will be a little bit easier for you to be able to complete the operations plan, as well as corrections for Section 2. And you will finish Section 3 financial management or strategy and Section 4 operations plan and submit those all at the same time. So that should be quite useful for you. I do want to go through operations plan now just because for some of you, I won't see you on Monday as it is a holiday. And the rest of you, I'm not obviously seeing you today on Friday. And, there's a lot of time throughout the week that we should maybe start working on this. So Section 4 requirements. This is all located under Blackboard already for you. There is a template in which I do ask you follow, and then just as a reminder, you'll be removing the section questions that each individual portion has. Those are for you to guide you along the way. So the four different requirements are for these is that we're going to do an organizational hierarchical chart. We're going to call it an org chart because I can't say the other word apparently. We'll have a front office and uniform service. We're going to do all this for front office, uniform services, housekeeping, and food and beverage. So an org chart. The way that you want to look at your org charts are going to be how you want to run your company from a senior management level. So you're going to be required to make at least 3 org charts, all for front desk, housekeeping, and food and beverage. But alternatively, you should probably come up with your own org chart that will be used for everything. So as an example, you want maybe a senior leadership team that just has your general manager, your director of food and beverage, housekeeping, front desk, maybe some rec positions or HR marketing, things along those lines. And you might think that multiple people might need to do this because we are a small resort. So we might have multiple roles. And on the left, obviously, is an example of maybe some of the org charts that do exist. So for the first one, you will have to describe the department. So this is a requirement for all operational areas. So what is your introduction statement? So if you're doing food and beverage as an example, you might be talking about, and some of this will be reiteration of what you've already spoken about, but you'll be talking about generally, what is the description, who's working there, what are the hours of service, such as that. That information then will also follow you down. Then we come up with our org chart and wage strategy. So in this area and building off your senior management level org chart, develop a chart and wage strategy for all positions. And just like take a look at this one here. So as an example, maybe your front desk manager is making $70,000. This will be senior management will be the only people who have a salary position. Everyone else, assistant managers, supervisors, and then frontline, will all have $1 per hour wage. So this is what I came up with just as an example. Maybe the assistant manager gets $24 an hour. Basically, $25 an hour is about 50 grand a year. So you think about it that way, it's about a $20,000 difference, which I think is pretty reasonable. And then guest service representatives, 19. And then you go down. These are also valet and bell person could be gratuity earnings, so minimum wage. And then a night auditor, which is also kind of a supervisor in the evening, maybe a little bit more to bring them closer to that assistant manager position. Now, we might only have one front desk manager, an assistant manager, but you might have several of these other positions. But you want to come up with an idea of how you might pay them. Next part is uniform. So uniform, you give a description and imagery for all of your employees, but this should also match the job requirements as well as your concept. So you already have come up with different color schemes that you think that you'd be using. You will also need to show multiple different uniforms. So as an example, in my front desk, I might have a front desk agent, I'll have a manager, a valet person, maybe a bell person. They might be similar looking. Maybe my valet and bell person wears the same uniform, but the front desk or the guest services representative, front desk agent looks different, as well as does the management. And even easier, a bartender might have a different dress than a chef. So of course we want to show that as well. And this is where you can use AI, and using your color schemes and even your fonts and logos would be fantastic. And then we get into the schedule, which is, I would say, the most complex portion of this, because it is really dependent on a couple things that we've decided on our financial strategy. This works really well with actually submitting both at the same time, because while you come up with senior management level wages for your actual individual senior leadership team, that amount of money will actually be broken down into your finances as part of your labor. And moving back the other way, your occupancy will be used to just determine what your actual staffing will look like. So those are good because they're going to go back and forth, and we're going to use those. So you're going to develop a 1 week schedule based on a busy week, and you're going to do this for all 3 areas that we are looking at. So that's, again, housekeeping, front desk, food and beverage. Front desk and housekeeping will probably just have a single schedule, where food and beverage, you might have multiple locations. So you'll just have to keep that in mind. Now, we'll go through some details in class, but as an example right here, this is a Monday through Sunday schedule showing occupancy throughout the week, how it basically climbs up. Now, I will provide you templates as well, which will allow you to also have a line here that'll say how many rooms does that actually mean as far as sales go. Assuming, for this place, let's assume we have 100 rooms, because that'll just make it easy. We sell 25 rooms, 30, 40, 55, 85, 90, 25. It's just an easier math. So given that, then we would have to come up with an idea of how many guest service agents, how many night otters, how many concierge door person valets. And there might be occasions where some of these positions, Monday through Thursday might not even be required, right? So you're going to keep that in mind, because while we want to provide a high level of service, we also don't want to spend too much money. So there is a balance here. What I will say is that with every single position, it must always be manned, right? So there's minus maybe some of the restaurants, there's always somebody at the front desk, there's always somebody in housekeeping, and there's always some sort of management supervisor level around. So a couple things that we need to understand before we move on is that no one should be working over 40 hours a week, and no one should be working more than 5 days. Yes, in the real world, you might have occasions where people work split shifts and have to come in an extra day or just pick up overtime, but we don't want to plan that way. We want to plan that we are not paying overtime and that people get 2 days off, because we need our people to last long and not burn out. Employees should also have at least 12 hours between their shifts. That gives them enough time to get home, get 8 hours sleep, wake up, breakfast, shower, etc. And we don't need all full-time staff. And that's often what people forget, is that we want full-time and we want part-time staff. We want a good, solid contingent of full-time, but you almost want to develop it that your full-time will handle your slowest season completely, and then your busiest season you fill up with part-time. That way, maybe a couple extra full-time. That way that when, the slow season does kind of happen, these are the people that you start saying, okay, thanks so much for coming. And a lot of people are just looking for that summer work. When it comes to front desk, it has to be staffed in at all times, and then check-in and the checkout will be the busiest times. So, checkout's usually 10 a.m., 11 a.m., and check-in is 3 or 4 p.m. So think that's a 5 or 6 hour window that you're always going to be working with, and that's when it's going to be the most busy. Although people will check in throughout the remainder of the evening. Night otters can also be supervisors. Staffing must be adjusted based on occupancy. And also you have to ask yourself a question, what would my manager actually be doing? So sometimes managers are just that. They're writing schedules and they're dealing with training and new people. But in a smaller resort, you might actually have your manager kind of double down as an actual frontline employee. So if that's the case, when you're doing your schedule, you might want to just make note of that somewhere, where from the hours of 3 p.m. to 6 p.m., the manager is an extra guest service relations agent and he's doing check-ins or she's doing check-ins. And then also you might want to think of things such as scheduling overlapping start and end times. As an example, for a front desk, we might have someone that comes in at 9 a.m. till 5, but then you also have people that come in from 2 p.m. to 10. So you have those, that should be 5 p.m., apologies. But basically from 2, 3, 4 to 5, there's this hours of overlap between these two people, which is kind of that busy check-in portion. And then they work until 10, and then you have your night outer come in at 10, and then they're till a certain time. So just kind of give you an idea of how that could work. Now with housekeeping, a little bit different. Whereas in front desk is more worried about when customers or guests are coming in. This one here is more worried about when they're leaving, I suppose, is a good way of putting that. So it's still based on occupancy and room checkouts. Now, Sunday and Monday may be busier than a Friday or Saturday, because at this point, and as you've seen from our previous occupancy statement here, we have 85 and 90% of the rooms being sold on these particular days, which means on these days, we should have all the rooms cleaned up, ready to go. We'll have to clean 55 rooms on Thursday, give or take, to get it ready for Friday. But often what happens is that people stay for weekends, right? So instead of a full room clean, it's just a turn down service, or maybe nothing at all. So if they come in Friday and they leave Sunday, and that's a very standard, typical thing, your actual Fridays and Saturdays might not be nearly as busy. And what you might have is that Sundays and Mondays have now become much busier, because now it's a full reset of the hotel, more or less, getting ready. Check-in, same thing, check-in and check-out window is short. Not all rooms need to be cleaned the next day. So just as an example, you don't need to bring in 9 people on a Sunday if you're not selling all those rooms for Monday. You can clean half of them on Sunday, the other half on Monday, and just spread out your people. So maybe you don't have to bring in extra people, part-time staff. Each room will also, so part of your operational will be based on how many rooms you do clean, and how long does it take. And then you also must work in time for travel, breaks, stocking carts, extremely messy rooms, that kind of thing. So, given, and some of you have some pretty unique accommodations that might require an hour or an hour and a half per room, because they're a full cottage located outside the building. So, as I said, these bonuses are fantastic. I love that you guys are doing this kind of stuff, but you're also going to have to work it into your labor schedules and your pricing models. And then, of course, don't forget that common spaces, lobbies, travel corridors, all these areas must be clean and clean quite regularly, and laundry as well. So all of this stuff has to be taken into account. And then we have food and beverage. So it's also based on occupancy, meal periods, and the style of service. And then we have this other part of our business, which we can't as easily guess what it's going to be, and that's some outside experience. So people might just come in that live locally, depending on where you're located, just to have dinner. So you are located in cottage country. A lot of people, you're on the water, you have docks. People might boat to you to have dinner. So, or just drive to you to have dinner. So it might be something, just keep in mind that although, yes, you only have 100 people in the room or 100 people on site on a weekend, you might get another 30, 40, 50 people coming in from neighboring areas. So this is going to be a bit of an estimate, I guess, but I'm going to say at least, anywhere between 60 and 80% of your customer base is going to be coming from within your actual location. So we said here, as an example, we had 50 rooms at an 80% occupancy. That's about 40 rooms. Assuming double occupancy, there's 80 people. So how do you determine how many of those people will visit the restaurant? Depending on the meal period. So if this is breakfast, and especially if it's included, you can almost expect every single person to come. Maybe you'll have a couple that just don't feel up to it. They sleep in, something like that. Multiple locations may require multiple schedules. So many of you have multiple locations. Common ratios for front of house to back of house is 3 to 2. So meaning if you have 6 front of house workers, servers, bartenders, they're usually about 4 in the kitchen, split between dishwashing, line cook, etc. And then all areas need prep time. So unlike where you just check into a front desk, or unlike where you just sign into housekeeping and start your day, before we even open, we need time in which to go through and set everything up, set the table, just